Plug-in hybrids have been popular for many years as a best of both worlds solution, with a useful 30 to 40 miles or so of pure electric running and petrol power to keep you going after that. Low CO2 and company car tax bans have also made them particularly popular with business users. Here we have got two of the best options if you are after a compact premium plug-in hybrid. We've got the Audi A340 TFSIe and the Mercedes A250e, both of which are in hatchback form. You can get the A-Class in saloon form if you want. Now, the Audi will do pure electric running of up to 40 miles, while the Mercedes manages up to 44. Critically, they both cost around about £36,000 to £40,000 depending on what trim you go for. Perhaps more importantly for a lot of people in this class, they also both fall into the 8% benefit in kind tax band for company car users, and they stay there until April 2025 at the earliest. So they are really quite cheap as company cars. In fact, if you're a 40% taxpayer, you're looking at around about £100 per month in company car tax if you go for a mid-spec car, which most people will. So if you want to know the critical financial figures, we're going to put them up on the screen now. The gist of all of those figures is that these two are very, very close on all of the critical financial considerations. The Merc does get faster charging and a slightly longer official range, but it's a proper photo finish nonetheless. As for charging, it'll take around 4 hours for a full battery in the Audi if you plug it into a standard 7kW home charger, or more like 2.5 hours for the Mercedes. Both use a Type 2 socket that will also be compatible with the vast majority of public chargers. The cable that you need to plug into a normal 3-pin domestic socket is also provided, as standard with both the Audi and the Mercedes, and it'll deliver a full charge in some 5 to 6 hours. For now, a quick word on those official MPG figures that we've just shown you, because the difficulty with plug-in hybrids is that they always give you astronomical MPG figures in official lab tests. The best thing is to just completely ignore them. They really are kind of nonsense and they're quite misleading. Yes, they do officially do sort of, well over 200 mpg. In practice, to figure out if you're going to save money, you want to figure out if you can charge regularly enough and if you're going to do most of your routine journeys on electric power. If you will, then these could make a lot of sense for you, because you're talking about electric costs around about half of what petrol does per mile at the moment, something around 7 to 8 pence per mile for electric, as opposed to around about 15 to 18 pence for petrol. If you can do your routine journeys on electric only, then possibly a plug-in hybrid will be good for you. However, if you can't, then do think carefully about whether a full hybrid or even a diesel might be better for you, because you may well find they're cheaper to buy and just as efficient on the motorway. When it comes to practicality, one of the downsides to plug-in hybrids is that the battery often eats up a lot of the boot space, and that is the case with both the Audi and the Mercedes. The Audi's is the smallest boot with 280 litres, but it is at least a decent sized boot opening and the rear seats fold flat. The Mercedes boot is a little larger at 310 litres, but that's still quite small by most non-plug-in hybrid family hatches, which typically have more like 400 litres of boot space. Plus, you have nowhere to keep the cables, so they take up even more space in the boot. There's enough space in the back seats of the Audi for a couple of average-sized adults to sit very comfortably, or a couple of car seats should be no issue. The Mercedes is very similar, so you'll get a couple of adults in the rear seats quite comfortably, but there is a fraction less leg and headroom overall, and you have to go for the mid-spec AMG line Premium to get a centre rear armrest. Clearly then, neither of these cars are really the most practical options. In fact, I have to say, if you really do want practicality in a plug-in hybrid, then do have a look at the Skoda Octavia and Skoda Superb IV, because they're both way bigger and more practical than these, and yet they kind of cost a much similar amount. So have a look at those if you do want big boots and plug-in hybrid. But I think in these cars, most people are going to be more interested in the interior finish and the tech, and I don't think that the A3 disappoints. It definitely feels very smart up here. I don't know that it feels design-wise particularly interesting. I think it's a little bit sort of boring, but there's some nice trim inserts and some nice materials. Everything feels pretty classy, so I don't think you're going to have any issues. Plus, I really like the fact that it's just got straightforward aircon shortcuts here. All A3 plug-in hybrids get this 10.4-inch touchscreen, plus Audi's digital cockpit readout. The touchscreen responds quickly and is fairly logical to use, plus it gets nav, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. We would certainly pick this system over the more confusing system that you get in the Golf GTE. I'd go for the cheapest Sport. You still get your LED headlights, your leather upholstery, really most of the stuff that you want, and you can still add the sound and comfort pack, which is a really, really popular option, which brings the Bang & Olufsen sound system, heated seats and a reversing camera, so that's probably worth adding. And I definitely wouldn't go for the top spec competition, because that really is just a lot of money for a lot of style stuff. I think the Mercedes feels a little bit classier than the Audi in terms of the sort of material finishes and the variety of sort of textures you get around the cabin. And more than that, I think it's the style really that I like. It's a slightly blingier look, I guess. Up to you whether you like that or not. More importantly, it's really easy to use. So you get these straightforward aircon controls down here. That is all good. The steering wheel's really lovely, nice slim steering wheel. You get digital driver readout in here too. I have to say it's not as big as the readout that you get in the Audi. Now, the touchscreen that we have in this test car is actually not representative of what you get in a base A-Class today. They've updated the range and this is a slightly older car, so you get a 10.4 inch touchscreen in the Mercedes. This screen that you see here is a little smaller than that, but it does get the same software and usability, which is pretty good even when you're on the move, thanks to the touchpad and the touch-sensitive pads on the steering wheel. I think it is, in terms of the equipment on this car, it's a really cynical aspect that both of these cars you have to add quite an expensive pack to get adaptive cruise control. That is kind of virtually a safety function that really should be standard on these cars, I think. Nonetheless, the Mercedes is reasonably well equipped, so you get your LED headlights, your heated seats and a reversing camera as standard, so you can't really quibble with that. If you go for the mid-spec AMG line Premium, then you do get the very cool 64-way kind of ambient lighting and a few other kind of useful additions, including that rear centre armrest. So I can see why you'd do that. The top spec really is unrecommendable, it's too expensive and it's really just style stuff. Right, we are all about busting the myths in this video, and I've already talked about the official MPG in plug-in hybrids. Now I want to talk about this sort of general perception of plug-in hybrids as being really sporty. Now it's very easy to get a lot of power and torque in a plug-in hybrid because they've got an electric motor and a petrol engine. In the Audi you've got a 13 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery powering an electric motor on the front axle, together with a 1.4 litre TSI engine, and that gives you 201 brake horsepower. But it doesn't feel like a hot hatch. It isn't a hot hatch. It weighs more than an equivalent sort of fast petrol version. And not only that, but plug-in hybrids, they struggle a bit with consistency for brake feel, throttle response and all sorts of things because it's got so many different modes. That's not to say that they're not really good to drive. They are, and the A3 is a very good case in point. Everything about it feels very planted, very confident. This is an S-Line on 18-inch wheels. Rides quite nicely actually. You do get quite a bit of tyre noise, I'll give you that, but wind noise and generally engine noise, very good. It does get quite boomy if you accelerate hard, so what am I in? Stick it in comfort. You've got your drive select down here, efficiency, comfort, auto modes, all of that stuff. And you can also access your EV stuff in here as well and choose battery hold or battery charge to best make use of the different systems. And naturally it has the ability to recognise your route on the nav and shuffle between electric and petrol as it sees fit. But stick it in comfort, which is what most people will have it in, and accelerate hard. That 1.4 TSI does get quite boomy, doesn't it? But, you know, 9 out of 10 times you're just pottering around. It's really quiet and actually quite a nice smooth engine. I really like it. The steering's quite light, nice slim steering wheel. Everything about the A3 just feels composed. Doesn't thrill me. I doubt it's going to thrill you, but it does do the job really effectively. And I will add here, again, with having a lot of power and torque, often through the front wheels only in plug-in hybrids, as is the case with both the A3 and the Mercedes A-Class, you do tend to get quite a lot of wheel spin. The Audi seems to be really good for that. I've only driven these in dry conditions. Even in the dry, that Mercedes can get a bit squirrely, leaving a junction with any kind of enthusiasm at all. So the Audi definitely beats it for that. Generally, really nice and refined. In EV mode, which you can access with this button down here, really lovely and quiet and smooth. And of course, in plug-in hybrids like this, you can do motorway speeds very easily in EV mode. They're fast enough too. The petrol engine doesn't kick in unless you really accelerate hard in EV mode. So it's very easy to just use your battery when you've got the potential to do that, even if you've got quite a long commute. So that's all good. So overall, I think the A3 is a really good example of a very sophisticated little plug-in hybrid.
As for real-world range, you can reliably expect to see between 25 and 35 miles in the Audi depending on temperature and conditions. Don't forget that even plug-in hybrid EVs will have a lower electric range when it's cold.
So you're talking about much the same recipe with the A250e as you get with the Audi A3. So petrol engine, it's a little 1.3 turbocharged engine in here, 4-cylinder, complete with it's a 10.6 kilowatt hour usable battery, and an electric motor, all of which feeds power to the front wheels, and you're talking about 215 brake horsepower and 332 foot-pounds of torque. So you get a little bit more power and torque in the Merc than you do in the Audi. Both weigh a similar amount too, so just under sort of 1,700 kilos. 8-speed automatic gearbox, dual clutch, so it's really kind of much the same mechanical setup as the Audi. It does feel kind of a bit sportier though. I think the engine's actually noisier still than the Audis if you want to stick it in sport and give it a little bit of fizz on a good road. It does get a bit coarse, but it's not too bad. I've done quite a few miles in this now. I actually prefer it in sport, or pure electric mode is the best, because pure electric, really smooth, really quiet, perfect for around town. Comfort, I think the problem is it's trying to be quite efficient, and between the gearbox and the throttle response and the varying sort of shuffling between petrol and electric as it sees fit, if you've just got it in the auto hybrid mode, it can feel quite inconsistent. This again comes back to what I mentioned previously about plug-in hybrids having that issue with slightly inconsistent sort of driver controls. The Mercedes definitely you can level that accusation at it. Particularly the brakes can be a bit tricky to get right for smooth driving around town. They seem to sort of vary in response quite a lot. But 90% of the time, if you just lift off the throttle, the brake regeneration's very mild, just feels like normal engine braking. The paddles on the steering wheel give you decent control over the gearbox if you want it. And actually, if you do stick it in sport, I'd say this has got a little bit of an edge on the Audi for just being a bit more fun, really. It's got a nice front end on it, really responds, and you can actually quite enjoy yourself. It is a bit firmer though, the response. I think it's slightly better body control, slightly firmer. This just feels overall a fraction sportier than the Audi A3. For all that, I stand by my statement that neither of these PHEVs feels like a hot hatch, so definitely don't go thinking that that's what you're getting. It's not quite so common sense how you control the electric modes in the Merc. So if you stick it in sport, it charges the battery. That's not always that obvious. And there's an option of battery level, which means it will maintain the battery level. And of course, there's pure electric driving as well. Now, I have another bone to pick with the Mercedes. Not really in the way it drives, but to do with the dash layout, I suppose, or the steering wheel, because you have cruise control and speed limiter here. Now, I've done it twice so far, in this and in various other Mercedes that have the same setup, and you accidentally turn the speed limiter on, and before you know it, you think that the car's broken and it won't go over 15 miles an hour. It's particularly easy to do when you're manoeuvring around town or car parks and that kind of thing, and you don't realise it. You pull out of a junction and suddenly the car's not responding. It's a really weird thing. So there you go, nothing to do with the dynamics, just a frustration that you might find if you do live with this car.
When you're out of battery, we saw well over 50 mpg without trying very hard in both the Mercedes and the Audi, so both promise to be reasonably economical, even if you haven't plugged in for a while. So, which of our compact plug-in hybrids is best? Well, the truth is that these two are so closely matched on the finances and even in terms of the way they drive, that you can really choose the one that looks best and go for it. They both do the job very similarly and both are excellent. However, we are going to settle for the Mercedes here because it goes a little further on electric running, has a slightly bigger boot, and we think has the slightly nicer interior. So overall, the win here goes to the Mercedes A250e plug-in hybrid. Don't forget to head to cargurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars, and while we've got you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the CarGurus UK YouTube channel and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any of our videos.